Ho, 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 what's up?
What's up with you? Ho, 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 ho.
No, I had to start it off that way because that's Kyle's way of saying hi to people this holiday season.
Yeah, in the Christmas season, I do, go up to the cash register. Ho, 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 what's up?
He randomly decided to do it at Bright Nights. If you don't know what Bright Nights is, it's a Western Mass thing where there's people outside and he just decides to drive right up to the woman and say, ho, 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 what's up?
Yeah, you make it seem like that was such a weird thing.
Because it is the weirdest thing I've ever heard and seen you do.
She wasn't even caught off guard by it. I was just like, ho, 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 what's up, everybody? And you were like, don't ever say that again.
Don't ever say that again. Anyways, welcome back to Redo or reDON'T. I'm Kayla.
And I'm Kyle.
Today we are redoing one of my favorite, which I hinted at. So if you know, one of my favorite Christmas movies, easily a top 5, if not number 1. But it's hard to pick a number 1. But anyways,
you change your number 1 like every week.
Because it depends on my mood.
Okay.
Honestly. But no, this one's pretty good. Today we're doing Miracle on 34th Street, the first one in 1947, the second one in 1994, which is wild to me that the second one came out in 1994. You were saying that's the first year or the same year as the first Santa Claus?
Yeah.
To me, those are two different time frames. When I think of Miracle on 34th Street and the Santa Claus, I would think that Miracle on 34th Street came out in maybe like the 80s. Or the 90s, but it's crazy that I guess they did come out in the same year.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess I also don't like really associate them as coming out at the same time, but I'm not like, I don't know. You were saying when we talked about the Santa Claus movies, you were like, oh no, I definitely thought that it came out in the 2000s. So that's something that like I think you just need to like. Well, yeah, it's just something you need to come to terms with is like your memory. I mean, because that's probably when you first saw it or your first memory of watching it.
So you're telling me that it's possible for things to exist before I did?
Yeah, oof. I know.
That's tough.
I know. It's tough to wrap your head around.
I don't think that's possible. I think the world started when I did, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it probably is because I saw the Santa Claus in the 2000s-ish. But
then you saw Miracle on 34th Street later
in life.
Too.
Yeah. I don't know why that's not processing for me to being in the same year, but I think let's just think of them. They're two completely different movies.
They are. That's
Miracle
what
on
I was just about
34th
to say,
Street has that older feel.
Yeah.
And the Santa Claus doesn't. So.
Right. No, that is definitely a fair assessment. Like that is 100% true. Is for movies that came out in the exact same year, one feels much older and the other one. Like even if you both watched them in 94, if you went to the theaters in 94, you would be like, one of these has an older feeling and the other one newer.
One's a remake, one's not. So I wonder if with the Miracle on 34th Street, they wanted to keep that old time feel because we were talking about it when we were watching the first one in 1947. The second one in 1994 is a complete copy and paste. It's the same movie. They really didn't change stuff except now we have color. Welcome to the world.
Almost like way too copy and paste, where the dialogue is verbatim. They don't really change much except at the very, very end. But almost like you can guess that like what scene is going to happen next because you've already seen it in the 1947?
Yeah.
Like, if you watch the 1947 movie, then you just know exactly what the next scene is going to be in the 94 one.
The only difference is in the 94 one, they elaborate a little bit more on certain scenes, but they didn't add anything new in. They didn't change anything.
Yeah, I mean, the 94 one is 2 hours. The 47 one is an hour and a half. So, like you said, they kind of elongate certain scenes.
Right.
But other than that, it is just without that extra half hour of like fluff, for lack of a better term, that's in the second film, it is like verbatim and scene by scene the exact same.
Right.
And some of the jokes are the exact same. You know what I mean?
No, the script is just very similar.
Yeah, which is funny because the 1994 one, the script is like partially written by John Hughes, who is like a renowned screenwriter. He wrote Breakfast Club. He wrote the vacation films that we've already reviewed. 16 Candles. He wrote some like real classics. So he's a very good scriptwriter. So it wasn't that like he was out, he doesn't have ideas, or, he, like, I don't know, it must have been a conscious decision to like just stick so close to that first one and not want to change it, because he is good at writing his own stories. He easily could have put his own spin on it.
Yeah.
So it just must have been like a decision that they wanted to do, is to stay so true and close to that first one.
Maybe because it was such a classic movie and it had such high ratings, they wanted to just bring it into color. Truthfully, that's the only thing that I can think of, is they just didn't want to change it, other than there was more technology when they made it in 94.
Yeah, so I want to come back to that point later on in the podcast, when we're talking about, is it necessary? We'll come back to that point.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. But I mean, Miracle on 34th Street, it's kind of weird. I was thinking about this when we were watching it. I think this is the first one that we're reviewing on the podcast that isn't part of this like era. Like the reason I wanted to do this podcast so badly when we first started and created it is because I feel like we're living right now in this time period as the reboot era of movies and TV. Everywhere you look, it's a preview for a new movie that is either a legacy sequel or a reboot of something else that came out a long time ago, and they're bringing back the main cast from the first film that hasn't been doing anything for the past 30 years. And this film is the first one we're reviewing that is completely separate. Like it doesn't have to do with this era of television or movies.
Not at all. It has such a wide span. 47 to 99.
Yeah.
It's almost 50 years.
Yeah, which again has to do with, remind me to talk about that later when in the Is It Necessary, I'll go on a whole long rant.
Okay.
Tying it all together. But
yeah, no, I guess, but that is just also just a crazy little fact about the first one. It came out July 4th.
Oh, really?
Why did a Christmas movie come out July 4th?
Wait, so which one was that? That was the first one?
July 4th, 1947.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know why. We were figuring out, or I learned last night when we finished watching the second film that it was released in 94 around the same time as the Santa Claus. And it said that the Santa Claus with Tim Allen like completely eclipsed Miracle on 34th Street. Like they thought that Miracle on 34th Street was going to do like big numbers and be a big box office hit because so many people loved the first one and whatever. And then it was completely overshadowed by Tim Allen, Like it's so funny because Miracle on 34th Street is like this heartfelt, sweet Christmas movie. And Tim Allen's playing like a whack job. You know what I mean? Like, in his boxers.
Right.
And it's more of a wacky comedy film.
And that's the one that took
people
over.
Loved that one, yeah.
Yeah, maybe because it was just something completely different.
I think that's what it was.
Had the Miracle on 34th Street not had to compete with the Santa Claus, maybe it would have done better.
That's what I definitely think. I think that if that was the one Christmas movie that was coming out around that time, it would have been huge.
But the 94 version is the one that I always see on TV. I never see the 47 version on TV anymore. Anytime I think of the Miracle on 34th Street, I think of the one that came out in 1994. I would say that is the classic Miracle on 34th Street.
Interesting. I don't know if people would agree with you. I definitely know that I saw the first one that was in black and white in high school. They like showed us that in school, I think around Christmas time. So if I hadn't watched it in school, I probably wouldn't have ever really like discovered it.
Yeah, no, when we watched it together, that was the first time.
Yeah. But I don't remember when I watched the 1994 one for the first time. Like, I don't know if that was something that you do?
I have a distinct memory of it.
Really?
Yeah.
When did you, what was the memory?
It was, I would say, high school-esque time, maybe middle school or around there, kind of. But I would say at least 10 years ago, vaguely. And my grandpa and I watched it together. I was over at my grandparents' house on like a Saturday, and my grandpa and I watched it together. And we were both just like, wow.
Oh,
that
he
was
hadn't
amazing.
seen it? Yeah.
I'm sure he had, but that was the first time that I saw it. And I remember it so vividly because I remember thinking, this is such a good movie.
Yeah.
And it was just fun to watch it with my grandpa.
Yeah.
We were watching Christmas movies together, as we still do. But I have that distinct memory of the first time that I watched it because it was one of those movies that I was like, oh my God, this is a beautiful movie.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with it. I have been since that day.
It really is. It is a beautiful movie. Like, I love that one. I love both of them. I mean, I remember watching it in the 1947 one in school and being like, this is really good. Like, some people can't appreciate old films like that anymore. You know, some people are like, you can't?
No, I'm agreeing.
Oh,
that
okay.
People can't.
Yeah, but people are like, oh, black and white, boring. Like, just that alone, or the way that old films were made and like the humor. You know what I was thinking as I was watching it is, so the actor in the 1947 one who plays Santa Claus, it's like Edwin Gwen.
Gwen.
He won. I know, right? That's a tough one to say.
So weird to say out loud.
Edwin
I
Gwen.
wrote it down, but now that I'm saying it, Edmund Gwen.
But he won an Oscar for that role, for playing Santa.
The movie as a whole won 3 Oscars.
And it was it nominated for Best Picture? I think it was.
I don't know.
I think it was nominated for Best Picture. And I was thinking, like, back then, they were having Santa Claus movies nominated at the Oscars. Now, like, they go for, you know, I haven't seen this movie, but like Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Oh yeah.
Was like, I think, won Best Picture last year, and it's supposed to be, but it's supposed to be like this very, I mean, it's probably thought provoking, but it's supposed to be basically like it's like an acid trip that you're watching.
Is it really?
It's supposed to be crazy. I
did not realize that was. I thought it was.
It's supposed to be like different timelines, like that are all intersecting at once or something. It seems that's what my understanding of it is. I mean, maybe I'm butchering it, but like. I haven't seen that one, but even any other movies that have been nominated recently are just a lot more like strange than the simple like Santa Claus heartwarming film that came out in 1947. And I was thinking about this when we were watching it. Is like there's not a single cuss word. I mean, it's PG, right? Like, you know, it's very much so tailored towards families. And those are the movies back then that were nominated for Best Picture. I mean, granted, I think in 47. There were very few films, if any, that were swearing at all.
Yeah,
and now
probably not.
You have, Wolf of Wall Street set a record for like the most, swear words or F-bombs in a movie. It had like 500. It's like everything is just rated R now and has a million cuss words. And it's like, this was just something that was simple and like heartfelt.
Beautiful.
The point of what I'm trying to say is like, you can still make a good film without having to make it like, overly violent, filled with swear words, as crazy and like abstract as you can possibly think. Like something simple and nice and sweet can still be such an amazing movie.
Right. Like we said, it had 3 Oscar wins, but overall it had 8 wins, not necessarily at the Oscars, just 8 wins total and 1 nomination. So the 94 version had a nomination, but that was it. Which actually, if you're saying that Edmund Gwen... I can't say his name.
I know, it's a tough one.
One, the guy who played Kris Kringle in the 94 one, who was Richard Attenborough. Oh, what is with these Kris Kringles and the weird names? Richard Attenborough, he was nominated for Best Supporting Actor.
Oh, okay.
Odd that it was supporting actor.
Yeah, who is like the lead?
Kris Kringle, Santa Claus, is never a supporting actor, but okay. Nominated but didn't win, so...
Okay, but still, it was probably a little bit more rigid with the films that were coming out. It was probably still... Probably
more to compare it to and more competition.
Yeah, or just, like, not all movies were the same like they were in 47, probably, Now you're getting a little bit more of an expansion of the type of films that are being nominated and that people want to go see. Mm-hmm. And now it's just completely different. If you made Miracle on 34th Street right now, it wouldn't be nominated for a single thing.
No.
Not Best Actor. It doesn't matter who you'd get to play it. Nobody would be nominated for that. Everyone still might like it and go see it. It might be a box office success, but it's not going to be nominated for anything. They just don't nominate those type of films anymore.
Yeah, no, they don't. It's changed a lot. But it has really good reviews, the 47 one. So I wonder if for its time, this was a groundbreaking movie. Mm-hmm. Just completely different than what it was used to. I don't know other movies that came out in the 40s. Sorry, I wasn't alive then. But I do wonder if for its time, this was, back then, did they have movies questioning Santa Claus and proving that he's real? Was this a groundbreaking concept? Now in movies we have today, the parents question it. I mean, look at the Polar Express. The parents question it the entire time.
Yeah.
In movies like that, and then come to the end to realize that Santa is real. But there's so much question. I wonder in 1947, was this the first time that people in a movie questioned it to then prove if he's real or not?
Yeah.
Like, I wonder if it was just a groundbreaking concept because of how well it did.
I could see it being like people didn't want to bring their kids to see it because they, as much as it's like a PG family film, they may have been like, we don't want our kids to doubt the existence of Santa. Right,
rightfully so, but it did so well. The IMDb scores were 7.9 out of 10.
Yeah, see, like,
beautiful.
very few films, like, are in the 8s.
Right.
You know,
this
for an
was pretty
IMDb.
close.
Yeah.
And the 96% on Rotten Tomatoes and an 87% audience score.
Yeah, so
for
a
the
lot of people love that.
1947 one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I know the 94 one is a classic to you because that's what you grew up on, but people that are probably like, you know, there probably are a lot of people that did grow up watching the 47 one, and that's like a tradition or a classic for them around Christmas time.
Right. The 94 one did good, 6.6 out of 10 on IMDb, 60% Rotten Tomatoes, and then 62% audience score. So I would give it higher, but I'll accept that.
I bet you that people are just like, it's the exact same thing.
Right. That's probably the downside that it got.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Is like, if you're going to watch one, I guess go watch the original, you know, because it's literally the exact same.
Yeah. I love it though.
Or especially like if you're comparing the two, if you go and you watch the first one and you come and watch the second and you're like, I wonder, like, you know, are they going to make it more modern or whatever? And it's like, oh no, they do the exact same
thing.
Then you'd be like, okay, well then why did I just spend money on a ticket to go watch something that I could have just watched, you know, I've been watching for my entire life.
Right.
So that might have been like a downside to actually be so close to the original.
It's interesting though, because comparing the two, in the first one, they talk about Macy's and they talk about Gimbals, and those are legit stores. But what I was reading, and I don't know if you saw this, they had to ask Macy's and Gimbals at the time, obviously. You can't just throw a store in the mix and expect them to be okay with it. And both stores said that they wanted to see the movie first and then they would approve it. Oh. So did you read this?
No.
They filmed the entire movie with Macy's in it, using Macy's for everything. You know, Macy's was the department store that the Santa Claus was at. They filmed everything using the terms Macy's and Gimbals, and then they had to have, you know, the higher ups at both of those stores watch the movie to get the okay. So they filmed this whole thing not even knowing if they could air it.
That would be so frustrating. I can only imagine being like, yeah, who knows if they're even really going to let us use this. We're going to have to go back and shoot all kinds of either scenes over again or at least have people like dub audio. And I'm sure
you couldn't do that in 1947.
Well, I was just about to say, in 47, could you even do anything like that? So.
No way. And back then, it was on tape.
Oh,
so
yeah.
They truthfully would have had to go back and refilm everything. There's no editing. There's no Photoshop. There's no, like, you just go back and redo the tapes.
You know what I would have done back then? I would have been
scrap
like,
the movie?
No. I would have been like, even if they were like, oh no, we actually don't like that, you can't use ours, I would have been like, all right, send them, and then just send them right to the theater and be like, oops, sorry.
Did you send the wrong one?
Right, my
what a
bad.
Shame. Yeah, I'm sure that would have gone over real well. But both stores did approve to it, so
yeah,
it was fine, which Macy's didn't approve in the second one.
I didn't see that. What I did see is like, it's kind of funny because on this podcast, we obviously always talk about like, does anybody come back? And this isn't a legacy sequel. It's very much so just like a remake, 50 years later. But they actually do bring back at least one person, and you wouldn't know. Did you see this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
only one person.
What was his name? It's Alfred in the first one, right?
Alvin Greenman is the guy who plays it. He was the doorman in the 1994 one, and he played Alfred in the 1947
He's the doorman
one.
in the second one. It's not like he has any lines or anything. He's the doorman. But
it's still cool that they brought him back.
Well, that's the thing. First of all, he was young enough in the first one that 50 years later he could still be in it. But Alfred kind of has like enough screen time in the first film. Like that's like a legit character,
Right.
And so that is cool that they bring him back. I mean, obviously very much so like not putting him, it's not like he went from Alfred in the first to Santa in the second one. Right. They kind of threw him this like pity cameo type thing, but cool that he would want to.
Yeah.
I understand why he would want to.
Right.
So that's really the only person that they could bring back, maybe like the little girl, but
the little girl maybe, but no, they didn't.
Other than that, it's not like they're bringing back, the Mrs. Walker or the lawyer.
Or Brian.
Well, Brian. It's Fred Gailey in the first film, and that's the only person. They changed his name to Brian Bedford in the second one.
Right.
And it's like, that's so random and weird. I don't know why.
In the first one, it's Doris, right?
No, you're talking about the mom.
The mom, yeah.
I'm talking. Oh, you're talking.
Yeah, but they changed the mom's name.
Oh, you're talking about how
too.
they changed it a little bit,
slightly, from like Doris to Dory or something like that.
Yeah, maybe just like a nickname.
Kind of, yeah. But they did. Do you know why they changed that?
No, is there a reason?
There is a reason.
Oh.
They changed his name. I don't know why this was a thought process in it at all. But they changed his name because Bedford Falls is where It's a Wonderful Life is set.
Oh.
So they changed the last name to Bedford in honor of that, I guess. Again, I don't know why. That's the reason why they did it, but I don't have any further explanation as to like why It's a Wonderful Life is coming into play in the remake.
Another great Christmas film,
sure.
But other than the fact that maybe just the people making the 94 one like really loved that film and wanted to throw a tribute in there, they literally kept everything else
the same except
for a carbon copy. And yet they were like, we got to change the name.
Yeah.
You know?
I don't know, maybe for the movie or for the character, Fred Gailey just didn't fit. But then they changed it to Brian. No offense to any Brians out there or Freds, but Fred and Brian are two very basic names.
Yeah. And
so it's not like it wouldn't fit someone. Like it fits anyone.
I certainly wasn't watching the first one being like, Fred Gailey. Like, what kind of name is, you know what I mean? Like, that's just the character's name. It just flows. It was fine. But the one big difference, like the only difference really, is at the very end of the entire film. So the point of the film, you know, one guy, it's Kris Kringle is living in New York, and he ends up in both films ending up as the Santa in the Macy's Day Parade just by chance. And people are like, he's such a good Santa. And it's obviously because he really is Santa, but they don't know that. So they're like, we want him to be the face of, in the 47 one, it's Macy's. In the second one, it's Kohl's, which is essentially the same as Macy's, but they want him to be like the face of their department store around the Christmas time. And he obviously does everything very well because he is Santa. He, you know, speaks multiple languages to any kids that come up to sit on his lap, and he knows where all the best toys are that are on for the right sales, literally just so that every kid can be happy. And then it starts to kind of like rub some people the wrong way that this guy's passing himself off to be Santa.
Those are the people that were the competitor store, and they were mad because, you know, Macy's or Kohl's was getting the sales because of their Santa and taking all the Christmas sales from the other department stores. Yeah.
So like a bunch of people that, you know, get to know him are kind of like, we think he's crazy because this guy legit believes he's Santa. And they end up trying to like entrap him. Like you said, it's a competitor store. Entraps him into being violent so that they can get him thrown into a mental hospital. And they're like, he deserves to be there anyways. He actually thinks he's Santa. And then Fred Gailey or Brian Bedford, depending on whichever one you're watching, decides to represent him to prove that he is. Now that I've given you that entire synopsis,
sorry it took 25 minutes if you haven't seen the movie before.
Yeah. But
hopefully you have.
Yeah, but then at the very end, you know, it's a courtroom scene where they're trying to figure out, is he going to get like sent back to the mental hospital, or are they going to find that he is Santa and let him go free? And the only thing that they change is the evidence that like exonerates him. And in the 47 one, it's that the post office like recognizes him, Kris Kringle, to be Santa, and that he is receiving all of these letters from kids that are just addressed to Santa. So their argument is like, the United States government in the form of the post office recognizes him to be Santa. He's getting the mail as Kris Kringle, and, you know, it's synonymous with Santa. So if the U.S. government does, why wouldn't the court? They do almost the exact same thing. It's still a branch of the government in the 94 one, but this time it's in form of, they don't even like do it with proof, essentially. They just say that like the United States Treasury prints dollar bills that say, "In God we trust." And they believe in a higher being that is not proven to be real, but people believe in it. And the U.S. government acknowledges that that they're printing on their money that there is a God.
Right.
So if they can believe that there is a higher being that nobody can see and nobody can prove is real, then the court can decide that there is a Santa. It's the only change that they really make. And it's a big one, don't get me wrong, but it's also like it's along the same lines. It's still branches of the government premise that like they're using as their scapegoat as to like why we can justify allowing that this guy is Santa.
Right. No, yeah, that is the only difference. And I guess it's an interesting change. I'd be curious, in the writing room, why they made that change.
I know, right? Like they stick so close to the first one. They weren't like, hey, we need to change things up. They clearly did not. Yeah. And then right then and there at the very end, they were like, hey, we got to do something a little different.
Yeah, I know. I would love to know the reasoning behind that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, but obviously, so like you just read the reviews, so both were well received. Like I understand why. I guess we'll get into like, is it necessary? I definitely think it is necessary. This is one where like, because it's 50 years in between. So I really think that it is necessary because I understand and fully accept and agree with the fact that like if movies that came out, a movie that comes out in 1947, 50 years later, are people still watching it? This one maybe, yeah, if it's a Christmas tradition and a Christmas classic, but I can see how films that come out 50 years ago can kind of fall into the cracks somewhere
easily,
and be forgotten and lost. And it's like, hey, if this generation is going to miss out on this great film that came out 50 years ago, then it does need a remake and to be modernized and to be re-released so that it's not lost on people nowadays.
Right.
So that I understand. It wasn't really a money grab, I don't think, it was just like, hey, this is a great Christmas film, but it's been 50 years and it's time for, a redo on it.
You do see so many other movies doing that too. A Star is Born being one of them.
Well, that's something that that's something that has existed forever, is remaking older films. Yeah. It's not the same as the reboot era that we're in right now that is kind of a cash grab. That's like, hey, this film's only 10 years old and yet we're like, hey, let's make it again because people loved it.
Right.
And like,
50 years
let's bring it back.
Yeah.
It's like, no. 50 years had gone by. It was a great Christmas film. People just kind of wanted a modern version of it so that it doesn't get forgotten.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that's 100% necessary.
If they did it again now in, I'll say 2024, because it's not coming out in the next week and a half, I would say it's probably not as necessary because the 1994 one is still so prominent in Christmas time today. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, I mean, I agree. You have a black and white film and that's so well received and so loved. Why not bring it up to speed? Because there was just so much of a span. So much has changed in those 50 years. Whereas I would argue that more changed in those 50 years that really has between this time and 94.
Yeah.
I don't look at Miracle on 34th Street from 1994 and say, oh, that's such an old film. Like, you can totally tell. But I look at the 47 and I'm thinking, yeah, a lot has changed in those years. TVs went from black and white to color. You have more editing software. You have a lot more technology to help prolong the life of this movie.
Right.
So absolutely, I think it was necessary to take that classic and bring it into modern day. Don't do it again. Stop there. You did it very well once.
In 2050... if
Maybe.
You want to.
Yeah, right,
but
exactly.
Right now, it's not ready for any other kind of like redo or
no,
like
because
remake.
so much has changed between 1994 and now, but not as drastic as 1947 to 94. Yeah. In other ways, sure.
Yeah.
But not really in the movie scene where you need to remake.
Right.
Unless now the hot toy is AI. Like something like that, but... You don't need that. That's just like a very minor little detail in the movie.
Yeah.
It doesn't need another one, but I think it needed it in the 90s.
Yeah, I have no problem with them remaking that. Obviously, it sounds like, I'm going to give it the redo.
Well, considering that this is one of my, if not my favorite Christmas movie,
I could assume
absolutely.
You were. Yeah, I could assume you were. But it deserves every much as bit of it. I mean, it does kind of copy exactly. So if you like the first one, you're going to like the second. But everything that they do well. Like the humor is well executed. Just a nice, feel good, like family film around Christmas time. So I understand. Like it deserves every little bit of the good ratings it gets on Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb. The redo or reDON'T. They get the highly coveted redo.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's just a good Christmas film all around.
I love it. I love it. Honestly, one of my favorites. It's hard. I think this one may be number 2 because How the Grinch Stole Christmas just with Jim Carrey has to be number 1. It has to be.
Yeah.
But I think this is my second favorite Christmas movie.
It's a good pick.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Last things, how or anything that you're watching or anything going on in the world right now in television or movies.
Still watching The Crown. It's kind of about it. I'm addicted to that. So my mind is just constantly fixated on The Crown. I don't want to watch anything else because I'm watching that show. So that's just kind of taking up all my time.
Okay. Something that I wanted to talk about is actually something I'm listening to, and it's something that I'm going to defer to you on because I know that you've listened to this too and that you were really excited about it when it first came out. And it's been out for a month or two, so I may be late to the game. But I was just listening to it the other day, and I was like, it is pertinent to our podcast, is the song Now and Then by the Beatles.
Oh, I love that song.
Yep. So, I mean, again, it's relative to our podcast. I'll defer to you to explain like the dynamic about it and the backstory behind it.
You have all 4 of the Beatles while they were alive. We'll rewind to that time frame. They're releasing music. They're the best of all time. Of course, artists have scrap songs. John Lennon passes. Years later, Paul McCartney and George Harrison and Ringo Starr, they release some music, and one of them was going to be Now and Then. For whatever reason, it gets scrapped again. But now we have the guitars, the guitar strings, and the background music from George Harrison. Never released. Now in 2023, Paul McCartney decides to use the demo from John Lennon. It was his demo that Yoko Ono gave to Paul McCartney. He pulls those vocals, pulls the guitar background music from when George Harrison was alive, and uses AI to complete the rest of the song. So the AI replicated John Lennon's voice to fill in the parts that he could not do because it was a demo. So they obviously never fully recorded that song, which I think is such a cool concept that they took a demo, used AI, and I had my grandpa listen to it, who is the biggest Beatles fan you'll ever meet. He doesn't know the difference. Like, he cannot tell what is John Lennon and what is AI. Like, he listens to that song, and I had him listen to it, and I had him watch the video. There's a music video that goes along to it. They kind of AI generated John Lennon and George Harrison in it too. And he was almost getting emotional because for him, it was like his favorite band in 2023 is back together. It was really cool to watch him watch that music video. But basically, they came out with that song in 2023. Paul McCartney kind of brought it back and sang his part, but him and John Lennon harmonized. So he used AI to finish John Lennon's harmonies and released that song and music video.
So there you go. I mean, your grandpa like found it nostalgic, which is
loved it.
But yeah, like that's what
I may have just butchered that explanation.
Okay.
Sorry. No, I know it's correct, but it was probably a very wordy explanation.
Yeah, no. I think it was a good job. I mean, it was, the point of it was that like you give people some more Beatles now in this era. And again, it's like something that, like, I understand why they want to do it now is because people these days may not be going back and listening to the Beatles music. Like, I don't know their entire catalog. I've heard a couple of songs here and there and their hits, but like similar to Miracle on 34th Street, if you want today's current generation to not miss out on like some great things that happened so many years ago, this is a way to do it, is to kind of like keep re-releasing something and be like, hey, this is something that, we don't want to just disappear because it was such a great thing back then that we wanted to kind of live on. So that was Paul McCartney's like mentality with it. And, you like that song, right?
Oh, I love that song.
See,
I love that song.
You like it. It still lives up. I mean, your grandfather who loves the Beatles still loves it. And, it brought back that nostalgic feeling, which is what so many of these films set out to do. And the Beatles were able to do it in music form with Now and Then. But Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. That's what I was listening to recently.
Have you listened? You've listened to the song?
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah, again, I can't really compare it to like their old catalog. I don't know a lot of their songs. I just kind of know their more famous ones.
Sure.
But it is like good as a standalone for sure too, you know?
The Beatles are so interesting to me because they have beautiful songs and then they have songs
Yeah.
that I'm like, what were you on when you made this?
Right.
Would love to know. They're great. You know, I can't bash them at all. The Beatles are the Beatles. They proved themselves and they're going to prove themselves even when two of them are dead.
Yeah.
Rest in peace. But I don't know. I love the song.
Good.
You
I'm
give
glad.
it another listen. Give it another listen.
All right, I will. But yeah, so Miracle on 34th Street, reduced from both of us, and this is not going to air until after Christmas, so I hope everybody had a good Christmas.
Yeah.
But we successfully were able to do the Christmas themed December, not the December themed Christmas. Right?
Yes, we didn't butcher this one the way that we did
Halloween.
Yeah. Christmas is better anyway. So,
Yeah.
And I stand by that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for listening. Come back for next week's.
Thank you.